Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Brandon Bias from CheckIt.com and welcome to another Tutorial Tuesday. Today we're going over a text effect that I learned how to do pretty recently, and that text effect is this guy right here. It's this futuristic, grungy, I don't even know, it's just a futuristic, grungy text effect. And no, I can't take any credit whatsoever for the actual idea behind this, like all the blend modes and all that crap. Like, I actually learned this from another tutorial, so I'll actually go ahead and put the link to the original text tutorial in the description. But don't think I completely ripped off of this. I actually added in a few bits here and there, just to make it something that I thought looked pretty good. So don't get mad at me for like ripping off this guy or anything like that. I actually did put a little bit of my own little flair onto this. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into making this actual text effect. So let's go ahead and make our new document. And so we're going to go ahead and go with our usual 1920 by 1080 width and height, because I don't know, I just like 1080p resolutions and all that. So for the background contents, we can go ahead and leave that as transparent. And let's actually go ahead and change up the name on this. Let's just call it grunge text, just for the time being. Alright, so let's go ahead and hit OK. And there we go, we got our new document. And so the thing we're going to start off with is a grungy background. So you can either grab some sort of grungy texture off of Google that you want, or you can go ahead and use this guy right here, which I will be posting a link to in the description, so you can go ahead and go download that right now. And so once you got this picture open up in Photoshop, go ahead and right click that background layer and click duplicate layer. And so for the document, we're going to set that to grunge text, because that is the document that we just created. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And now let's go back to our grunge text document, and you'll see that we have that already duplicated into our background. So let's go ahead and delete our layer 1 back here, because we don't really need it anymore. And let's go ahead and start by adding in our text. So let's grab our text tool by hitting the letter T. And so for the font on that, I'm using a downloaded font called Acens. I'll go ahead and put the link to that in the description. And for the size, I put that to 500 points. And for the anti-aliasing, I set that to sharp. And then the color, you can go ahead and set that to black or white or blue or whatever the heck you want. It's not really going to matter, because we're going to be changing that up in the blend modes later. And also, before we get into typing in our text, go over to your character menu over here. If you don't have that, just go to Window Character right there. And so just change the AV to 50, that way it spreads apart the letters a little bit. Just kind of makes it look a little more interesting, I suppose. So let's just go ahead and click somewhere and type in the word text in all capitals. You can go ahead and use whatever text you want. And so I want to make sure that this is in the dead center of the entire document, so I'm going to use a little trick that I learned how to do that. We're going to go and grab our move tool, or you can hit the letter V to do that. And we're going to select the entire canvas by hitting Control A or Command A if you're on a Mac. And so we're going to go up here and click this second icon right here, and then the second to last icon right there. And so that's to center it vertically and horizontally, so that technically puts it in the dead center. And now we'll go ahead and deselect the entire canvas by hitting Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac. And that just deselects it for you. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and add in a bunch of effects onto the text, but there's too many of them for me to memorize for whatever reason, so I'm just going to go back and cheat real fast, and I'm going to copy the layer style, and I'm going to come back and paste it on here, right there. Okay, so I know it's not fair that I just kind of copied and pasted it, so I'll just kind of go through a run through of what you need to do to make your text look like this. So the first thing you're going to do is go over here and put your fill all the way down to 0%. And next up, you'll want to add a drop shadow onto that. And so let's just go ahead and put this in the middle so you can kind of just see what all of these effects are, alright? And I'll just read them off to you. So for the drop shadow, you're going to change the blend mode to color burn and leave the color as black at 75%. Keep the default 120 degrees with global light check marks. Put down the distance to 0 pixels and then put the spread to 2%, and then amp up the size to 21 pixels and then leave the quality just as it is. Next, you'll want to add a outer glow, And make sure the blend mode on that is set to screen with an opacity of 15% with no noise. The color is going to be set to white. And then the spread, you're going to put that to 4% with a size of 250 pixels. And then next up, you'll add a bevel and emboss with a depth of 205% with a size of 5 pixels and 0 pixels on the soften there. And then for the shading, just turn on the global light, and it should set that to 120 degrees by 30 degrees on the angle. And then for the gloss contour, you're going to want to go to this little drop down arrow and select this guy right here, which should have a little title of ring. And then once you got that, go ahead and turn on the anti-alias. And then for the highlight mode and shadow mode, put up the opacity to 100% on both of those. And then just change up the blend mode so that it's to linear dodge instead of normal or whatever it normally is. And then next up, you'll want to add a satin on top of that with a blend mode of overlay and a 100% opacity. And then leave the angle at 19 degrees because I believe that is the default. And then turn up the distance to 238 pixels with a size of 122 pixels. And then once again, change that contour to that ring right there. And then turn on the anti-alias and turn off the invert on that. And then on the color overlay, this is actually going to be kind of up to you if you want to change up the color, but we used this bluish color, which is 275057. So if you want to just type in that number right there, you can get that bluish looking color. And then with that, you're just going to put the blend mode to overlay with a 75% opacity on that. And then next up, we'll add in a gradient overlay. And that gradient overlay has a blend mode of overlay with a 100% opacity. And then the gradient, if you give that a click, is this white to light gray. And that light gray, if you double click on that, is just BF, BF, BF. So pretty easy to remember. So I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. And then if you so choose, you can just leave all this the same, but I went ahead and turned down the scale to 94% just to change that up just a little bit. And then the last thing that I added in there was a pattern overlay. So for that, you can change to the blend mode to soft lights, and then the opacity is set to 25%. And then the pattern, you're going to have to click that little drop down arrow. And then if you need all of these textures right here, just go off to this little right hand arrow and then change that to artistic surfaces. And then just hit OK when that little dialog pops up. And then the pattern I use is this third guy right here, which says, if you hover over it for a little bit, it says burlap 90 by 90 pixels, grayscale mode. So just use that for your pattern. And then just 100% on the scale and then link that with the layer. And so that's all of the layer styles that you have to add in. I'm sure you can't blame me for copying and pasting all these because that would be a lot to memorize. So once you got all those, go ahead and hit OK. And so now we'll just go ahead and close that up. And now we've got our text ready. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and add in all of the bolts that you saw in the demonstration, which is all these little guys right here. And so in the original tutorial, I had some issues with this, so I just went ahead and made something, kind of on my own in a way, just kind of changed it up a little bit. Actually, before we get into that, I just remembered that the entire picture is a little, I don't know, it's still a little gray, so I want to make it a little bit darker. So the way we're going to do that is go over here and add a levels adjustment layer. And then as soon as that pops up, go ahead and change the black input to maybe 25 on that and hit enter. And so that'll just darken everything, make it a little more dark and grungy looking, just kind of adds a little bit more to it. So now that we've got that put in, we can go ahead and add in our bolts. So the way we're going to do that is go over here and grab our ellipse tool right there. And once you've got your ellipse tool selected, go up to the style and make sure you click that drop down arrow and turn off the style on that. And then the color is going to be set to black on that, and we'll hit OK. And so now we'll just go to the bottom of our letter T, and we'll click and drag while holding the shift key and let go once we got a good size on that. So let's use our move tool to kind of adjust the position on that. And so if you need to change up the size on that after you make it, just hit Control T or Command T if you're on a Mac, and then just click in one of the corners while holding Alt and Shift, and you can size that up or down from where it is. So maybe I'll size that down to right about there, looking pretty good. Okay, so that just represents the size of the bolt itself. Now let's go ahead and make the little Phillips head indentation in that. So what we'll do is go ahead and duplicate that by hitting Control J or Command J if you're on a Mac. And so now you'll want to go over here to the right hand side where it says Shape 1 Copy, and just go ahead and double click that little black box on the left hand side right there. And so on this, we're just going to go to where it says B and type in a 5 and a 0 for 50%, so that way it changes that to a 50% gray. And so now we'll just go ahead and hit OK. And now what we're going to do, so I'll zoom in on this a little bit better, is go ahead and hit Control T or Command T if you're on Mac, and then click in one of these little side dealios on here, and do that while holding the Alt key or the Option key if you're on a Mac. And just kind of size that inwards like so and let go, so that way it's a little bit thinner. Maybe we'll just go right around there. And you'll also want to go ahead and click in one of the top or bottom sides while holding the Alt key just to make it a little shorter. And so once you got that to a size that looks pretty good, just go ahead and hit the little check mark up there. And now we'll go ahead and transform this while duplicating it at the same time by hitting Control Alt T. And then we'll click and drag on the outside while holding the Shift key until it's on its side like so. And then we'll go back and hit that little check mark. And that looks pretty good just as it is. So what we're going to do is actually make this part into a selection and delete it from the black circle behind it. So what we'll do is go to Shape 1, right click it, and go to Rasterize Layer right there. And so now we're going to go to this little box on the Shape 1 copy and hold the Control key or the Command key if you're on a Mac and give that a click. And that loaded up the wrong selection. So I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to go grab our path selection tool over here, or you can just hit the letter A. And now I'll go ahead and click on this center guy and then shift click onto the second one. So now we've got both the vertical and horizontal ellipses selected. And now we'll go back and control click or command click that little thumbnail right there, and that should select both of those like a kind of like a cross. And now we'll go back to Shape 1 and delete that by hitting the backspace key or the delete key if you're on a Mac. I know you don't see anything happen on your computer screen, just kind of ignore it, that's fine. And so now we'll go ahead and deselect that by hitting Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac. And now we're going to start adding in some layer styles onto the black bolt and the gray little crosshair thing. So let's go ahead and do another copy and paste real fast. So I'll just grab this, copy, right click, paste, and now I'll go back and copy this one and paste it on there. Okay, so I'll go ahead and go through all the layer styles that I just pasted on there. So on the Shape 1, which is just the which is just the black portion right here, the first thing you're going to go ahead and add is a drop shadow. And the blend mode on that drop shadow is set to linear burn at 100% opacity. You got the default 120 degree angle. The distance is set to 0 pixels. The spread is set to 0%. The size is set to 3 pixels on that. And then the quality is at the default settings. And then the next thing we're going to add is an inner shadow. So the blend mode on that is the default multiply at 75%. Just change up the distance to 4 pixels and the size to 4 pixels as well. And then the last thing we're adding is a bevel and emboss with contour turned on. And the bevel and emboss is set to a depth of 450% with a size of 1 pixel. And then you just got the default shading and all that stuff down there is just default, so you don't have to worry about that. So once you got that for the bevel and the contour turned on, just go ahead and hit OK. And then for the actual gray part right here, so that's the Shape 1 copy that you'll be adding these onto, just go ahead and add in an inner shadow. And so that's just got the default multiply blend mode with 75% opacity. Put the distance to 1 pixel and the size to 2 pixels. And then change the bevel and emboss on there to have a 1000% depth. And then you'll want to change the size to 2 pixels and then just leave everything else as default. Oh, and also you'll want to change the direction to down instead of up, alright? So once you got that, hit OK. And so that way you should get this kind of look on the bolts, which is, I don't know. I think it looks pretty good in and of itself. So now we'll go ahead and put these all over the text. So I'm going to go over here, close these up, select both of the layers by, control clicking or shift clicking down to shape 1. And then we're going to put this into a group by hitting Control G or Command G if you're on a Mac. So I'll double click on that and rename this bolts. And so let's open that back up. So you can either just select these two and merge them together by hitting Control E if you're on a PC or Command E if you're on a Mac. But I'm just going to go ahead and leave them as it is because it doesn't really matter. And so what you're going to want to do with those two layers selected over here is go to your Move tool by hitting the letter V. And we're going to hold the Alt key on our PC or the Option key if you're on a Mac. And then just click and drag that somewhere to duplicate it. So somewhere around there is looking pretty good. And just hold the Alt key, click and drag it somewhere. Hold the Alt key, click and drag it somewhere. And just put all these bolts into a place where you think it looks good. So I'll just go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so I just went ahead and added in a couple bolts here and there, just, I don't know, just in places that seemed appropriate, I suppose. And so now I'll go ahead and close up that bolts group, so that way we don't have to see that massive amount of layers. Alright, and so now we'll go ahead and add in all of the little blue bars that you saw in the little demo. So all these little blue guys we're going to go ahead and add in now. So what we'll do is go back, and we'll go and grab our rounded rectangle tool right there. And so the radius on that is going to be set to 4 pixels. Make sure that there isn't a style on that yet. And then if you want, you can make the color white, just so you can see it for the time being. It doesn't really matter. And so now we'll just start off by going to the letter T for the time being, and just click and drag and add a bar where you think it should go. And if you ever need to reposition it while you're doing this, just hold the space bar and you can move it around like that. So let's go ahead and add it in right about there. Looks pretty good. Okay, so maybe that was a little too thick. So let's go ahead and try this again. So maybe around right there. Okay, that looks a lot better in my opinion. So if you ever need to position this after you've already put it on there, you'll want to go ahead and get your path selection tool, click on the bar, and then use your arrow keys to position that a little bit better. Alright, so once that's in a spot that you like, let's actually go ahead and add in the layer style on this to make it look like it's, how it's supposed to look. So once again, I'll go ahead and go back, and we'll copy this, and we'll bring it back and paste it in there. Okay, so the layer style that you'll be adding in onto this is going to start off with an inner shadow. And so that inner shadow is going to have a blend mode of linear burn with the opacity set to 50%. You got the distance and the choke down to 0 and the size set to 4 pixels right there. And then we have an outer glow set to 86%, no 80% on that. And then the blend mode set to linear dodge. And then the color is this light blue of 00C0FF for the number code on that. And so we'll hit OK. And for the spread, we have that set to 2% with 40 pixels on the size. And then the inner glow we added on here has a blend mode of screen with opacity 75% with a white color. And then just go ahead and make sure you have a choke of 0% and a size of 10 pixels on that inner glow right there. And next up, we'll go ahead and add in a satin. And the satin has a blend mode set to multiply. And then this color right here is 96F1FF for that color right there. And so hit OK on that. And then the angle is set to 19 degrees. And the distance is set to 13 pixels. And the size is set to 13 as well. And then the contour is this gradual, like, hill kind of looking thing. It's, what's the name on that? It's a half round. And so we check mark the anti-alias and the invert on that. And then the color overlay is set to a blend mode of normal with 100% opacity. The color is just this 3FDDFF. Go ahead and hit OK. hit OK again, and that should be all of the blend modes that you need for that bar. And it looks pretty good if you would ask me. Okay, so in order to put this all over the place, you can either go back to your rounded rectangle tool and just add in another bar by holding the shift key and clicking and dragging like so. But in my opinion, that can create inconsistencies in the size. So what we'll actually do is go to our path selection tool by hitting the letter A, click on that bar, and then hit Control Alt T or Command Option T if you're on a Mac. And then we'll just kind of click and drag outside of that while holding the shift key until it's on its side. And we'll put that right there, and then just kind of mess with the size using our little transformation box. So maybe right around there is looking pretty good. And so once you got your transformations all set up, you'll go ahead and just hit that little check mark in the upper hands area right there. And then just kind of do the same thing. So select one of these, Control Alt T, and just kind of move this over here. And you know what, let's go ahead and stretch that a little bit to make it go through that entire segment right there. And then once again, Control Alt T. And so just kind of go through and just add in all these bars where you think they look pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward through all this until I get to a part where I think I need to, you know, just kind of talk a little bit more about what exactly you need to do. So we'll be back in just a second. Alright, so I just finished putting in all of the little bars of light. You know what, actually, I'm going to go ahead and add in just one more, just right here. Just one really, really small one, just because, I don't know, this bolt looks a little bit lonely up here. So, I don't know. Obviously, I would put a little more time and effort into this if I were you, just to get something that looks a little bit better. Personally, I think my original one looked a lot better in my opinion. I mean, I don't know, just something about it just looks like it's a little more clean, I suppose. All right. All right, so that's actually all there is to this particular effect. If you wanted to add, you know, more to this, like maybe add a new layer, I don't know, set that to overlay, and then just add in black around the edges for a vignette, you could do that as well. So if you wanted to go ahead and add in a vignette like that, you can go ahead and do that too, just to, you know, add a little more focus onto the text. But other than that, this particular effect is finished. So congratulations on, you know, completing this tutorial. Oh wait, actually, no, we have not finished yet. I am so sorry. We forgot one last thing to add on to this. Alright, so the last thing we actually do need to add, I almost forgot, is to add a little bit of grunge onto the lights. So go ahead and grab a grunge texture of some sort. I just went ahead and grabbed this again from Video Copilot's DVD. I'll add a link in the description for you to download. And so what we'll do is once again right click that layer and hit duplicate layer and set the document to grunged text and hit OK, and then go back to our documents. And so now we're going to actually mask this to the shape, all right, of the lights. So to do that, go ahead and control click or command click the little box where it says shape 2, and you'll see that all of our bars were turned into a selection. And so with this layer selected, let's go ahead and rename this to texture over here. With this texture layer selected, go ahead and click the layer mask icon. And so now you'll see that, let's see if we zoom in. So now you'll see that the texture has been masked to the lights. And so the reason we're going to do that is so we can set the blend mode of this texture over here to soft lights. And so now it adds a little bit of grunginess to that. So if you turn it off, turn it on, you'll see that it adds just a slight bit of grunge onto those lights. All right, so now we are actually finished. So Sorry about that, it made a little bit of a mistake, but hey, we got through it, and we got a pretty cool effect in the end. So, thank you guys for watching this tutorial. As always, I hope you learned something new from this particular effect. If you like this video, please like and comment, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so that you can keep up to date with all of our new tutorials and all that. And if you haven't already, please go like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, because, I don't know, it's always good to have, more people involved with all of our stuff. And so, that's all I have for today's tutorial, and I guess I will see you guys another Tuesday, so I will see you later. Peace!